Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Lundgren.
Welcome to the Rangers Journey.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Rangers Journal. This is part 2 of Understanding Rangers. Now, last night, obviously, Richard went into detail over the game at the weekend, but he finished off with a little bit of Understanding Rangers from the fans' point of view. And we're going to continue that on this evening, talking about, first of all, the hierarchy, the board, the chairman, that kind of thing. Then the manager and his backroom staff. And then finally on the players. Based on some comments I got in our chat group this afternoon, these pods maybe could have been individual topics, but we're just going to try and fly through them and cover them in 15-minute sections for each one. Joined by a great panel this evening. I'll come to you, Jock. First of all, mate, nice to see you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about what we're going to be talking about, because it's very close to all our hearts, I'm sure.
And I'm not going to do this based on where you are on my screen. I'm going to do it based on who was here first. So Ryan was here next. Ryan, mate, nice to see you.
And Jubal, how are you getting on?
Yeah, again, rushed to get this started, and I've got a few slides to show up. So yeah, all scrambling around last minute to get hopefully I get a show together. And just as I'm about to come to Deano disappears from my screen. So we'll see if he comes back on. Maybe just his internet, whatever moment. Jock, just turn to some quick news today. We do look to be getting closer to a new signing. So, and in fact, more than one. It does look like the club is very active. It looks like they're pushing the boat out, and maybe that's been about 4 million yesterday. Will be another big loan fee for the Wolves, but his name has just completely gone from my head. That's right, and Scott Olsen, and it's looking like we've been waiting for players to come in from the beginning of the window. It looks things are moving now.
Yeah, seems to be. There's plenty of snippets of information out there, especially on Twitter, saying that it's it's going to be probably a loan fee with an obligation then to buy, which for a player of this guy's quality and caliber is something that I think we've been crying out for. And I say we've sort of been flirting with this guy for a good couple of years now, haven't we? Every time there's a window's come up, his name's always popped up, and he's been in our slides being scouted, and he's one that's certainly got the fans purring, that's for sure.
Yeah, Ryan, it's nice that we've already scouted him, so we don't have to do any more further work. We've already got the details all there. But yeah, I believe under Gerrard and I believe under Van Bronckhorst, we were linked with him. I'm slightly worried about the apparent injury history that he's had. But again, on that, this loan fee made me think, why are we paying a loan fee? But what I was hearing today is that comes off any transfer fee. So it might be good all round to get him in, have a look, see if he stays injury free.
Yeah, it's just to see also how he settles in with the club, the country, and all everything that comes with it that I'm sure we're going to speak about tonight. So it's very much a kind of try before you buy. It helps us with the financial fair play side of things, as well as it comes out of next season's budget rather than this season's budget. He's a player that excites. He's one of these guys that appears to get you off your chair when he's got the ball at his feet. I've done a wee bit of kind of digging into his background with my friends over in Denmark, and they all say that he's a good player. Every time that we're linked with someone who's either played in Denmark or from Denmark, I always pop a wee quick message into our chat. What do we think? And they're not always as complimentary of the players that we've signed as they are of this guy. So he comes with high regard from the boys that I know.
Good stuff. Well, we'll move on to the topic at hand, and I think Deano will be joining us again in a wee second. I'll see if he's there. Let's get him in. Deano, welcome, mate. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry about that. Just kicked me right out for some bizarre reason.
It wasn't me, I can assure you of that, mate. I assure you of that. We just had talked on the possible loan signing of Skov Olsen. What was your thoughts on that when you heard it?
I think that's as a marquee signing can actually go. Probably one of the biggest transfers the club will have in a lot of years, if you ask me. So, it's really, really good news that we're now in a position where we can target these quality players that have obviously a step up to anything that we've been subjected to in years gone by.
As I was saying there to the other boys, Deano, we're going to move on to the topic at hand. And as I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to look at 3 areas of the club where it's really important that the guys get it, get what it is to be a Rangers fan, a Rangers player, a Rangers representative, what we stand for as well. So I'm going to come to you, Jock. I don't know if you had much interest in chairman until the likes of David Murray kind of ruined things for the club, or even under Charles Green, or even has it been a topic of something you've been interested in other than
I think so, considering, whenever I first started supporting Rangers, it was David Murray, and it was Murray Metals plastered all over the stadium. And, alongside that, we enjoyed the highs that brought, all the success, and then, the players that came with it. So, then you obviously have the downside of his tenure as well, and what preceded him whenever he went down the roads of your guy White. So it's a mixed bag, isn't it? I said in the podcast or the chat earlier that we could do a 5-hour live special just on Murray alone, because there was so much happened under his tenure, and for me, I've only got, I would say, early years, only got good memories of him and what he brought to this football club. Obviously, then as an adult, that's slightly skewed, and but again, it's a tough balancing act. So I would say, yeah, in terms of chairmans and stuff, it's only something that probably only really came to light for me later on in my life, whenever obviously we went through all the trials and tribulations that we did go through.
Ryan, can I just ask you, Curry's mentioned in the chat there, my audio's not particularly great. Is it sounding okay to you?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure if it switched on to you. I think we had bother before. It was switched on to the computer rather than the mic before, so you sound a bit better now, mate.
Okay, I just mucked around with the settings. Thank you very much. I'll stay with you on the David Murray thing, because although I do remember a previous incumbent in the role, there are so many good and highs of David Murray's tenure at the club, but it's looking back on things, it was all just for his ego, and that's the kind of what taints even the good signings, the good titles, the good managers, is because of how it ended. How's your feeling on him and just in general?
Well, I would encourage anyone to, before they make a kind of real big opinion on him, listen to his book or read his book. I'm about halfway through his book that he's brought out. It's on Amazon. He was an Ayr United fan as a boy, so he's not came from a kind of Rangers supporting background, if you like. He was a self-proclaimed rugby man as well. Obviously we knew about his accident and stuff like that, so you couldn't even say that he was a footballer as such. So he was a businessman who liked to gamble and who liked to use the bank's money rather than his own money as well. He would look for investors, he would look for other people to come in and support him, and he would try and keep as much of his money out of the equation as he could and use other people's money to make success happen for him. You can't deny that he did bring a lot of success to the club. If it wasn't for Murray, would we have had 9 in a row? Would we have had Advocate and the European nights that he brought us? And he was the victim of circumstance. Obviously, the credit crunch that happened in 2008, 2009 didn't help his chances. The Bank of Scotland, who he was so friendly with, almost effectively went out of business and got taken over by Lloyds Banking Group, who weren't willing to entertain what he was wanting to do, and actually looked at his business methods as a whole and weren't as supportive as the Bank of Scotland were. So the plug effectively get pulled on him and the rug get taken out from underneath him. And you don't know. And it was a situation where, Craig White did go to the Lloyds Banking Group and say, listen, I will pay Rangers' debt to you. There was obviously the large overdraft, which was getting taken down over a number of years. We had the guy, Ellis, sitting on the board, who was constantly trying to get voted off, but Murray obviously had to keep him on the board because otherwise the bank would be pretty cheesed off with us. So he was a victim of circumstance. And I think, if you ask him, was it his choice to sell to White? Probably not. Did he believe that White was the right guy? Maybe. But White conned a lot of guys, not just Davy Murray, he conned all of us as well. So he was a Del boy and he get found out in the end. But I think if Murray could, if he could have a time machine, he wouldn't have done what he did. But he did gamble a lot with the fortunes and stuff. But it's okay us sitting here saying, bad things about him. He sold us down the river, and ultimately, the club did go into administration, and we did go down to the third division in the back of some of his decisions. But we weren't complaining about it when we were celebrating 9 in a row at Tannadice. We weren't complaining about it when we were beating Parma at Ibrox, who just won the UEFA Cup. So you've got to kind of take the bad with the good and stuff. And as I said, victim of circumstances and a victim of things that were out with his control.
I've got to say, Ryan, you should never judge what any of the podders are going to say, but that was a lot more charitable than I thought you were going to be towards him. But yeah, I mean, I should check his book out. Deano, I'm going to bring up the first graphic. Here we have not. I'm not saying these are the best and the best and the worst chairman or leaders of the club, but to me it shows two different people. That one that got the club and one didn't, and that is David Holmes, who's the first leader of Rangers, I guess, that I remember, because he used to do the end of season, the highlights package of the leading through 9 in a row, at least for a few of them. So I remember him not really knowing what he did because I was too young to understand what chairman or executive meant. But I know he brought Graham Souness to the club, he brought Walter Smith to the club, brought a lot of success to the club under his tenure. And then you have the likes of James Bisgrove, who to me, I'm not saying he's a con man, but he seemed to me he's one of these wheeler dealer London types. And for me, where he just showed he didn't get the club was arranging the game against Celtic in Sydney. So is there any other things that come to mind where you think of chairmen or leaders that have been bad for the club?
Charles Green. I don't think that man gave anything good to the club at all. Nothing but nightmares about that guy. Obviously, in a time when we were really, really vulnerable as a club and as a support, and he was the one that we were putting all our hopes on to try and fix the mess, but he just didn't do that at all. So that's probably for me the one out of the lot that I was just bad. And I think it wasn't even like now and again. It was from the day that he came into the club to the moment that he left, and then the incident and on the hospital bed and things like that. And it's like, it's not really. There's just nothing at all you can say that was good about that man and what he did for the club, and kind of just stagnated us, and we really needed somebody else in. And then obviously the Dave King and the Three Bears came in not long after that.
So, Jock, I mean, you look at something like Dave King, who he is a bit decisive, but for me, he is someone who understands Rangers, a Rangers fan. Put his money in his pocket. Okay, he wanted it back, fair enough. But that's a kind of the person in modern day. Maybe you would say that he's like David Holmes in a way that he helped bring the club back to, winning the league title again.
Yeah, well, that's it. I suppose he has that in the CV, and he has that credit in the bank with the fans, because he did bring back. He brought Gerrard to the club. He was instrumental in that, and he backed Gerrard, even though at times we thought this just isn't going to work, but he stuck by him, and look at the success that it did ultimately bring, and look at our European record off the back of what Gerrard brought into the club. It's night and day to what we'd had previously. Let's say we had fantastic teams over the years, but our European record, particularly in the 9 in a row era, was pretty grim after the sort of short success we had when we got diddled out the Champions League. But yeah, see, if you look at what they brought in at the time, it really was seen as though they were sort of rescuing us, and they were taking us away from the East Dales, and before that, they had that, as Deano says, that Egypt in the hospital bed, and then there was, Mike Ashley was there as well, and he was getting his hands into our commercial dealings, which again came back to bite us in the backside. How many years later, even though he managed to get rights for Ibrox shot for £1 and stuff like that, it was just a mess. And the Three Bears come in and slowly but surely, shifted any control and any sort of power that those guys had, and any influence on the board. It took the time, but we can safely say it's in the long run, it was probably worth the pain for them to take their time and do it the way they did, because we're here where we are now, aren't we?
Yeah. Ryan, again, I said at the beginning of the pod, I probably have made a mistake having these three different subjects into one, because we're already up to 15 minutes and we're only talking about the boardroom level. But let me just finish this one section with you. And if you had to sit down with our new American owners and explain what it means, what Rangers means to the fans, what it means to the country as a whole, what it means in world football, what it means to be in charge of an institution like Rangers. What would you say to them?
Success on the park, first of all, you understand that you're here to make money. That's fine. Every businessman is. I'm not under any illusion that they're not here to make money from us. That's absolutely fine. But that comes to bringing success on the football park. If they bring in success on the park, put the right people around the players and do that, we'll back them to the hill. We'll put our hands in our pocket. Week after week, we'll follow them everywhere, all over the world. As long as they're bringing us success on the park and bringing us entertainment, bringing us success, we'll be there for them.
Fair enough, mate. Thank you very much for finishing that off. Deano, let's start on the manager side. Who's the first manager you remember being in charge of Rangers?
Graham Souness. I was quite young when he left, but I do remember Graham Souness coming in, and one of my first memories of Rangers is actually signing Mo Johnston, and my first game going to Ibrox with my old man and guys outside selling stuff, and there was pictures of players, and there was Mo Johnston was the most talked about person in Scottish, British, if not world football at that time, and I was like saying to my dad, I want the Mo Johnston picture. Obviously, that young, no idea what was going on. And I remember my old man like just trying to steer me away from Mo Johnston, and I was like, no, I want that. And fair play to me, did end up buying it through gritty teeth. But Souness was my first memory of Rangers, and I just remember the level of hype that he got in the house from my dad and things like that. So, great man.
I'll swing back round the other way and come back to you, Ryan. I'm just looking at the dates, because I'm like Deano, the first Rangers manager I remember is Graham Souness. The first player I remember is Ali McCoist. But I'm looking back, and technically I lived under Jock Wallace and John Gregg as manager of Rangers, but I'll have no memory of any of that because I was too young. What's your earliest memory? Is it Souness as well?
No, Gaffer, Walter Smith.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so I first went to a game at Ibrox in April 1992, around about 2 weeks after Alan McCoist broke his leg playing for Scotland. It was my first game at Ibrox. I started watching Rangers earlier on in the season. I remember watching the TV when Scott Nisbet scored the goal against Bruges. It looked up over the goalie. I remember Durant's goal in Marseille. That was my earliest one. And then obviously, come the end of the season, Mark Hateley and Neil Murray scored in the Scottish Cup final against Aberdeen that year, and we won the treble and were, one goal away from the European Cup final, but we were, like Jock was saying, completely robbed of. So that was my earliest memory of it, and Walter Smith is got a place in my heart. He always has, and he always will do.
I think I'm going back a wee bit early. I think my first game at Ibrox was Rangers against Dunfermline, and it must have been 1990. Early on in the season, I'm sure it was 2-0. I remember Terry Hurlock was playing because he was jumping into tackles, and even at that young age, I'm like, well, that guy, he's a liability. But so, Jock, let me ask you, who's your first manager? I'm going to guess it's maybe Walter as well.
Yeah, Walter Smith. It's a gaffer, as Ryan says. It's just coming into it. Whenever I did, it was the 9 in a row season, and then it was the tail end, obviously the field 10 in a row, and then Avocat's season we won the treble. So coming off the disappointment of one, but then going into the highs of this is what it's like to be a Rangers fan when you win 3-0 at Parkhead, and the place is a riot, and memories that will never ever leave, even at that young an age.
I'm going to say thanks to Doug for making these graphics for me this evening, because it was kind of last minute last night. These managers, again, you could put Souness in there for me, but this is the kind of managers in our lifetimes, guys. I think I was very lucky growing up to have someone like Graham Souness, Walter Smith, Dick Advocaat, Alex McLeish. Looking back on it, was a success, even though at the time it felt, there was bad times when under McLeish. Obviously, Paul Le Guen didn't get Rangers. Deano, I take it you remember the Le Guen era. I was very happy when he signed because he'd done well at Lyon. Thought he was going to walk in and make us a European giant.
I think every single fan thought that. Did he not get like Lyon to the Champions League semi-final like that.
Along those lines, I think he won 3 seasons in a row as well in the French league.
Had such a good record domestically and in Europe with Lyon. So you're thinking he's going to come in and take us to the next level. And how wrong were we? Comes in, and remember Bob Malcolm going on about the pre-season training and how he affected just everything at the club, like, you know, all the running that they were doing, and, you know, not letting them, you know, do the school run, which was obviously, you know, just loads of things. And I remember Bob Malcolm like saying this guy just the minute he came in just knew that he wasn't going to succeed, and then the whole stripping the captaincy for Barry, and Gavin Ray, obviously at the time he was he got a run in the team and stuff as well, but like I think Gavin Ray pretty much said if Paul Le Guen wasn't there, he would never have got the run in the team. So but he was just an absolute disaster. You know, we had good centre halves under McLeish, and he comes in and signs Karl Svensson, who looked like he'd never played anything further than under 11s. So it was just an absolute disaster. And, you know, I guess everybody makes mistakes, but that's one that you thought, this is odds on for him to be a success. And then luckily he was only there 7-8 months, and the gaffer came back to save the day.
Jock, there's certainly, when I'm looking back at these pictures, there's certainly a personality trait that somebody like Le Guen, Pedro Caixinha, Michael Beale to a degree, and Russell Martin, that they don't have something that Walter Smith has, that Dick Advocate had. I mean, you could even say, okay, Ali left kind of disappointing in the end, but he did kind of do his duty to the club and getting us back up the league. So there's something about the ones that are successful, isn't there?
Yeah, you have to obviously have something about you to even go into management. You know, you have to have some sort of self-belief and have a good experience and a good background within football, whether it be as a player or as it coming through a decent coaching system and a coaching level. And when it comes to Rangers, it's, you know, it's one of the ultimate tests, I think, of any manager is to go to sort of either side of the old firm. Because the pressure is you have to win every game. The demand is there from day one, no matter who you're playing, whether it's a pre-season game, the expectation's there. And at the end of the season, it's trophies. You know, it's a progress in Europe, and that is a hard thing to do, especially now at this day and age, when you're operating within the Scottish League and you don't have the money that you see the teams down in England and the rest of Europe have. Even teams that maybe 10, 15 years ago through the Champions League couldn't dream of the sort of money they're getting now, like Bruges, for example. You know, the serious money and with teams like that. So to come to Rangers and you need to have something about you. And as you say, if you look at that, what we're looking at here, there's some serious accolades following these managers, and particularly Dick Advocate, some of the Van Bronckhorst, like what he won as a player. And he did okay with his career. Gerrard as well. There's like an aura with some of these guys, and I think those aura managers seem to do well at a big club like ourselves. Then you have the other side, which is obviously what we had in the summertime, is this ego stroke arrogance that you can see when you look at that. Russell Martin, Pedro Caixinha, and Paul Le Guen, ones that failed pretty spectacularly, didn't they? So, you know, says a lot in my opinion.
Ryan, I'm going to include Graham Souness in this because when I was thinking of this subject, I was going, well, we had these strong leaders, strong managers, you know, experienced men in the game, and to a degree, it's right. Why I was thinking that is because when we signed Alex McLeish, I was very wary because, he was first of all, remember he was an Aberdeen player, so that didn't fill me with confidence. I never knew he was a Rangers fan, so I never knew that. But he had done well at Hibs, but for me, that's not what a Rangers manager should be. But actually, looking back on it, you know, Graham Souness had no real right other than his football playing career to be in charge of Rangers. Walter Smith also wasn't the Walter Smith that we think of him now. I was kind of disappointed, like, why are we not looking for someone else? I was young at the time, but why is Walter getting the job? And then I guess Dick Advocate came in with some gravitas. He had some history behind him. But really, Rangers in my lifetime had a history of giving, I wouldn't say untested, but maybe to a degree untested, but it was the personalities that they got them the job, wasn't it?
I'd say so. Yeah, and I think it's, talk about the kind of orders and stuff like that. I think is if you command respect and you're just a decent guy, people just want to work for you. I think that kind of goes in all walks of life. That if you get the onboarding of your staff and you treat your staff with respect and you look after them properly, they'll work for you and you'll get the best results out of them. With obviously like Le Guin, the kind of carry on that he had and the strict rules that he had and stuff like that. If you alienate your staff and alienate your players, they're not going to want to work for you. They're not going to put their self on the line. Russell Martin, probably the most recent example of that. And I think if you're a likeable character, then you'll get the best out of your players. And I think from what I've kind of heard of the kind of early times of Danny Rowe from a couple of contacts I've got, then everyone seems to like him as a guy. He's just a quiet, unassuming guy. He's not running about demanding this and that. Like, he's just a very kind of quiet wee guy who just lets the players go on with their work and goes home at night and just he's very likable character, and he's certainly brought the players over, won the players over.
In that list, I mean, Le Guin, underestimated the culture in Scotland for a start, trying to change things as quickly as he did. I don't disagree necessarily with changing some of the health aspects when it comes to what the players were doing at the weekend and stuff like that, but he definitely wasn't back the same way he was promised. I would maybe even say Philip Clement fits into that category, that I do think he was a good manager, wasn't backed, and in the end was making excuses. I don't know what else you can really say. I'm not saying we should have kept him, but he obviously didn't have the budget that he thought he was going to be getting. But then you get chances like Russell Martin and Pedro Coutinho. Thinking about Danny Rowe, though, how do you think he's settled into this job? Do you think he has the aura to take the club on his shoulders and carry it forward?
So, as Ryan said there, he's very unassuming, quiet and things like that. So, in terms of the aura, you look at Dick, Eck, Walter Smith, who all had that aura, Stephen Gerrard, and that just came part and parcel with their personalities and I guess their own careers and stuff like that. But Danny Rowe, one thing about him which is different, which I've seen a lot of people saying in comparison to Van Bronckhorst, Beale, Clement and Martin, is that his man management skills are and attributes are on par with previous managers, which I think is really, really good. That somebody that's 35, 36, so relatively young, has got that respect from the players and is and man management such an important part for managers and coaches at any level in football, really, if you ask me. And he seems to have the man management on key, and that's obviously, we can all see that with the results that we've actually gotten, and with what the hand that he was dealt to where we are now, and we're in a title race because of him. The players that Russell Martin got, fair enough, they weren't particularly good, but he made them even worse. So Danny Rowe came in and he's done fantastically with the hand that he's been dealt, and it's good to see that the owners believe in him. So having that security net for him as well will give him a wee bit of relief that he can go out and do the best that he can, and without little sort of stress in the background, and know that Kavanagh's going to back him. So I'm really, really delighted with the couple of months that he's been here.
Jock, he's got the kind of the elephant off his shoulders, if that's even a term. Beating Celtic, he was always accused of, he's not won a big game yet. Well, yeah, he's beaten Celtic at arguably the hardest place to play them, which is Celtic Park. But with the referees, it could really be anywhere. Do you think if he gets, really, has he got, I think it might have been you, Ryan, on Sunday night, you said something along the lines of that he's been a sponge absorbing all this information from other European coaches. Forgive me if it wasn't you, Ryan, but it was along the lines of that he's got all this information and now he's in a position where he can put it all into practice. So do you trust him to take us forward and hopefully, I'm not saying we're going to win the league this season, hopefully we do, but do you see him being enrolled for a couple of seasons?
I like to think so. He certainly managed to get a tune out of what he was given when he came in, and you can see the progress there. You can see he's using what he's picked up over the years where he's been at, because he's been at big clubs. Bayern Munich being one of them. It's a massive football club on the global scale. So he did okay where he was at Sheffield Wednesday, where he was totally hamstrung by the board there as well, and he managed to get a tune of them and keep them up, and obviously we've benefited from that this season because of the situation there, and we can see that there is something there. He seems to have built something with this team that I've known, particularly in the last couple of games. I've seen that there's a steeliness about this team now, which wasn't there. There's a unity there. They seem to be playing for each other, and there's, whenever they score goals, there's just something building there. You can certainly see that, and that's going to be down to him, because the players that are in the team now weren't really getting much, or weren't given as much under Russell Martin. So he's had a big job to do, because he's had to sort of pick them up off the floor, really, hasn't he? Because and even after the setback we had at Hearts, we all, probably myself included, we all thought, here we go again. He's just basically hit the reset button. We're back to square one. But he's done a hell of a job to just say, right, okay, that we'll take that on the chin. We go again, and look at the run we're on now. Look where the places we've been, where we've picked up points, where before we would make it so difficult for ourselves, or we'd get so far and we shoot ourselves in the foot. He seems to be onto a winner here. I think we've got a good manager in charge, and if we can get the right quality in, which obviously we're looking at the moment, we can do good things this season.
Let me just take a brief minute to mention our podcast sponsor, which is the Bluebells Pub in Puerto del Carmen. It is the only Rangers bar in Puerto del Carmen, and they show all the Rangers games. I believe they even show Rangers Journal Pod, but they are our pod sponsor. So if you fancy a cocktail out looking at the beach, or you want to chill out inside, you can drink, you can eat, you can party at the Bluebells Pub in Puerto del Carmen. And please tell them that you heard about them from us if you do pop in. So thank you very much for the Bluebells for sponsoring us. Ryan, I'll come to you on the final section of the pod this evening, and that's Understanding Rangers, and it's to do with the players. Now, John Greig, obviously the greatest ever Rangers player, the statue of him outside the stadium. I personally haven't had a chance to see him play in the flesh. He was way retired by the time I was watching Rangers. But this doesn't necessarily mean a Rangers captain. I just mean to play for Rangers, you need to have something about you. You need to understand the club. There's a list of players that Doug's chosen some of these ones as examples that people that do. Again, not all captains, but there's something about each one of these players that they all knew what it meant to play for Rangers. They all knew that first and foremost it was to win. Doesn't matter if it's winning 1-0 or 5-0. Doesn't matter if it's winning with silky football or just grinding out a victory against an opponent that's 10 men behind the ball kind of thing. So, what's your opinion on Rangers players and what they need to have about them?
What a question. They need to be able to understand be able to handle pressure. They need to be able to understand difficult circumstances, be able to handle difficult circumstances, to be able to react well to adversity when things aren't necessarily going your way, not be spoiled by your situation as well, and appreciate your situation and be willing to work for it, and realise that there's probably about 50 other guys at the back of you willing to come and take your situation away from you. You need to be on the top of your game every single time you shot, whether it's training, whether it's a press conference, whether it's anything to do with Rangers Football Club. Every time you step out the door of your house, you've got RFC in your chest, and you embody that every single day. As far as the pressures of playing for the club, it's not for everybody. And even if you look at Nacho Novo there, with his background and where he came from, he came to the country playing for Raith Rovers, made his way to Dundee, and he's kicked a ball that sent us to Manchester into the Europa League final, as it was, or the UEFA Cup final as it was at the time. So it's not necessarily abundantly obvious. It's just part of your character, and it's a lot to do with the background. I like players to come play for us that have came, from almost nothing. The guys that have actually worked their way up and have had the hard yards, that have done the hard work to get it. Like Andy Halliday, who grew up in the Copeland Road, never went through any fancy football academies and probably didn't discover sports science until he's a 26-year-old. Guys that have actually had to really graft to get to where they've got. And you point the finger at boys who have came through academies now. I always point the finger at Brad Matondo in particular, who every single Rangers fan is desperate to see the back of at this transfer window. If we have to wait to the summer there, but that's £20,000 that's going to come back into our wage packet that we can spend on someone else who's actually probably going to work for it and deserve it. And it's all these guys that seem to come through these academies that seem to come from, they're basically spoiled brats, in my opinion. See, Brandon Barker, for example, came through the Man City Academy, who was going to be coming in, apparently to replace Ryan Kent, who done absolutely nothing from us. I think he's playing the 12th or 13th league level of English football now. It's hard to describe what it takes. I think it's just something that it's in your eye. It's your character of who you actually are. And it's probably comes from your family background and what you've been raised as. And I think as a club, when we're signing people, I think we need to start doing a wee bit more due diligence on that and actually see where this has came from. Will they have what it takes when times are hard? Because we all have times it does get hard for us on occasion. More often than not at this moment in time, unfortunately. But I think we need to start looking at that a wee bit further.
There's a couple of players in there that, the bottom corner, Arthur Newman, Nacho Novo. On paper, there's no reason to suggest that they would know what it's like to play for Rangers. No history of supporting the club. Probably not really knowing much about it. Maybe Newman would have heard about us playing, playing in Europe. But they came in and they showed that they could wear that shirt wasn't too big for them. I mean, as Ryan said, taking a penalty to send us to Manchester. I still remember running around the house when that goal goes in. I mean, the thing is, there was no doubt in my mind he was scoring that one, and because he felt that he knew how to handle the pressure.
That was exactly it. Took to Rangers like a duck to water. The pair of them, and Arthur Newman was captain. PSV comes in. Dick's saying to him, "I want you to be my captain," and having the respect for the club and people that were currently at the club to turn around and say, like, bear in mind he was left back for the Netherlands at the '98 World Cup, who got to the semi-final and were unlucky to not actually get to the final. So comes in probably as an elite world-class defender and says to Dick, "Nah, you need to give it to somebody else at the club." Obviously, Lorenzo Amoruso gets the armband. So that to me just says a lot about a person. That him coming in and going, I know how big this club is, but I've got the respect for the club for somebody else to be captain. And if he took the captaincy, I don't think any Rangers fan would have been bothered about that. We all would have been happy with that, with the pedigree that was coming in. But that just said a lot about the man, if you ask me. And obviously, wee Nacho coming in, and was it Wraith Rovers and he played for Wraith Rovers before as an Hibs or something. Am I right? Or am I wrong there? Dundee, that was it. So I think he wasn't playing a good level of football before he comes to Dundee, and then comes into Rangers. That at the time, because it's kind of coincides with the hand that I think that Big Ek was dealt. He wasn't dealt with a particularly good hand, and we were free transfers and things like that. And he comes in and right away he's just absolutely just loved the club. Every fan adored him. We knew that we were getting 100%, and every game that he played, he would cover every blade of grass and he'd leave nothing on the pitch. So yeah, he was a really, really brilliant signing for somebody that you wouldn't even think would have been a success given his, not to say limitations, but he wasn't exactly I think we had Nuno Capuccio around about the same time, didn't we? And he was obviously a Champions League with the European UEFA Cup winner and Champions League winner, I'm sure, with Porto. UEFA Cup, and and you'd have Novo on the team every day of the week before Capuccio, wouldn't you? So, and there's another player I actually quickly want to touch on around about at the same time. I think for me, I've got very, very good memories of was Dado Purcell. So he was with Monaco, and Ludovic Giuli got injured by about 28-30 minutes in the final, and Purcell comes on for him. It's already, I think, pre-contract agreement had already been signed and he was coming in. So he plays in the European Cup final, and obviously Porto win that, but he could have came to the club with a swagger and an arrogance that we do see a lot of people coming in and they think that they're bigger than the club and they don't need to try. So this guy came in and he was apparently instrumental in us actually, winning the league in 2005, and he was an absolute warrior on the pitch. He drove people on. He would in the changing rooms. He was apparently driving people on, and he got called an unsung hero because of the person he was. An absolute warrior on the pitch, and that man just came in and took the Rangers like a duck to water. And like you look at that and you think to all the players that come in now and they just didn't have a clue. And Dado Purcell comes in and he's just like he'd been at Rangers for 10 years. So and he was a free transfer. So it's like, so you can't really turn around and say that it depends on the value and things like that. He was a free transfer, and if he was half as good, I don't think Rangers fans would have complained given he was a free transfer. But he was just, for me, at that time, and the type of player and characteristics that we needed in that side, and he was just absolutely phenomenal for me.
Ryan, you wanted to come in on this point.
Just more of an example of somebody who's worked their way back from something. So Dado Purcell obviously came from Monaco, but his story before he signed for Monaco, he was actually, I think, playing Croatian football, and he was playing, I think, 3rd or 4th division, French football part-time, chucked football together, got himself in a bad way, was drinking too much, and about the bars, putting on a lot of weight and stuff like that. And his missus basically picked him back up and said, listen, you need to get yourself back to playing football again. Got himself back fit, and he had a cracking game against Monaco in the French Cup, and his performance was so good that Monaco actually signed him on the back of it. And it just shows you the kind of a guy that's been basically on his backside, fought his way back to the top of European football, playing the European Cup final, to then come to Rangers and playing in front of us and showing it. They're the kind of stories that I want to hear about, people that are going to appreciate and fight for every single inch that they get. That's what I want to hear.
Jock, I was going to come to you on a point that Ryan made earlier on, which was our recruitment policy. You've got to think that, I mean, maybe not the ones that were previously incumbent, but you've got to think the folk looking at the players coming in now, and even in the last 20 odd years or so, must have had, well, you've got to say, when you talk about signing Capuccio, maybe it wasn't getting used, but you've got to think that they would be looking at this, the type of personality a player has. And I know they will, but I think at a club like Rangers, dealing with the pressure and dealing with the weight of the jersey, that's actually more important than it maybe is at other clubs.
100%. As Ryan says, that it's different now. Players, academies, the treatment young guys get to earn the minutes and the jobs that they would have done back 15, 20 years ago, cleaning boots and doing uniforms and all that kind of stuff, that's all gone. The younger generation now are just mollycoddled, and they just get everything basically handed to them, and especially down Premier League, where it's, if you're 16, 17 and you've got a bit of ability about you, they'll chuck thousands of pounds at you a week just to be there without actually earning anything. Whereas if you listen to this, I love listening to stories like Barry Ferguson and Ian Durant and Charlie Miller, the dressing rooms that they walked into and the grief and stick that they got, but that's what turned them into, hardened them up, readied them for whenever they went on the pitch. Because if you don't perform in the pitch at Rangers, you get a bit of stick, and there's been many a player has come in and wilted under that pressure. Shamiti's got some of that pressure this season. He fired back. Cherny got a lot last year, and he fired back, and boy did he, because he really kicked on from it. Whenever he gave a bit back to the crowd as well. Josh Windass is another one that had a go at the fans and tried his best, but just didn't really sort of claw back any sort of credibility. So there's a big expectation when you put on that shirt. We expect you to put everything on the line, and Walter Smith has that famous quote: "Don't come to Rangers if you're not willing to put yourself second," because the club, the football team, the fans all come first, and that is just something that we as Rangers fans have seen over the years, and we're just kind of used to. So when somebody comes in, as Ryan says, like pick Matondo as the example, if you're not willing to put it all on the line, throw your body on the line when a ball comes in and block a shot or whatever, you're going to get stick, and you're going to get found out quite quickly that you're not here to play for Rangers. You're just here to pick up a wage packet, and that's not what us as fans are interested in. We want trophies, we want success, and you need to be performing at a certain level to get that.
Let me just go around, because we'll finish things off in the next couple of minutes. I'll go around you all and ask you what player in your, and it doesn't have to be your lifetime, but what player in Rangers history that each of you epitomises what it means, and someone who completely understands what it's like or what it's needed to be a Rangers player. Again, doesn't have to be a captain. Let me start with you, Deano. Who epitomises understanding Rangers to you?
I know you say it doesn't need to be a captain, but Barry Ferguson for me as a player just was everything that Rangers is to me. I think, especially old firm games, and like it's the enemy, and you need to hate the enemy. Just that level of hatred in him was just really, really, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So Barry Ferguson for me.
Anyway, thank you, Deano, for coming on this evening. Ryan, I'll come to you with the same question. What epitomises a Rangers player for you?
I think probably one of the guys who were on the previous slide there, Bomber Brown. It's one. It's just how many times did John Brown play through the pain barrier for us? Just he was injured. He was carrying knocks and stuff. Didn't care. Still came out, gave 90 minutes. He must have been an absolute nightmare to have played against, because if you had any chance of getting past him, you were going down the ground. What a teammate he must have been in the most successful, or one of our most successful seasons. That one of my first season, the 92-93 season that we spoke about a minute ago. John Brown played more than anyone else that season. He was actually the guy that played more games than anyone else in that side that year. A phenomenal Rangers man, and I wish there was more like him.
The most incredible thing, Ryan, is he was playing in title-winning teams and not getting picked for Scotland over a certain captain at another team who was wins. But if you Jock, I'll come to you on the same question. Sorry, Ryan, thank you very much for coming on this evening, mate. Thank you. Jock, come to you. You've got the kind of final say on it. I guess maybe I will, but I think Ryan's changed my mind on something, but I'll talk about it once you've said yours.
Spot on. I'm looking at the comments. John Brown, McCall, Gorham, all people. But see, for me, I'm going to go down the form route of somebody who came in and just took the whole thing in. And for me, it was Alberts. Just absolutely loved playing for Rangers. Put everything on the line. Played through his pain barriers, injuries. Made sure he was always available. Had a disdain, very much a dislike for the other team in the city, which again bodes well whenever you're playing for Rangers. Scored incredible goals, gave us some incredible moments, and just really, really took Rangers to his heart quite quickly, and still to this day holds Rangers close. So Alberts for me.
I was going to say the same as Deano. I was going to say Barry Ferguson in my lifetime. And I see there's a comment by Doug, Ali McCoist, which I also agree with to a degree. But where I maybe going to agree with you, Ryan, is where is Bomber Brown now? He's still working for the club. He's calling out cheating refereeing. He was outside the front door at Ibrox when he knew something was wrong with the takeover. Where was Barry Ferguson? Well, he was on his radio show doing something about himself. And I'm not, deriving Barry Ferguson's commitment to Rangers or his playing career, but when you've mentioned that there, John Brown would literally walk through walls for Rangers, and he still does it to this day. So I'm going to change my vote to John Brown as well. So thank you for that insight on that, Ryan. Guys, thank you very much for watching the pod this evening, and thank you very much for getting your comments on the side. Thank you very much for the Bluebells Bar and Puerto del Carmen for sponsoring the pod. If you do like what you see and you haven't yet liked and subscribed, please do that. If you can, please watch us over on YouTube, because that actually helps the channel out monetarily. And if you like to listen to podcasts, well, you can listen to this podcast back on all the usual Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, all the usual apps have the pods going up after they went out live. So thank you again for watching, everyone. We'll see you again. I think it's Thursday night. We're back with a Q&A show at 9 o'clock. Please join us for that if you can. And thank you for watching every night as a Rangers Journal night. Good night.
Every night is the Rangers Journal night.